Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. Thanks for watching. Doing a video today about an interesting titanium dive watch by Citizen. It's commonly referred to by the nickname Fujitsubo. It's the watch in the middle here. I have next to it a cheaper Citizen Promaster dive watch, the NY0140, part of the Fugu family, which is a huge number of models of Citizen watch. The watch on the right is one of my all-time favorite watches, which I've shown before on this channel. It's the Omega Seamaster Professional, the Bond Seamaster, but in black, which was only made towards the end of the run of these watches, and I think it's really the most outstanding version of that watch. So I've got some basic information on the screen about the dimensions of these watches. The Fujitsubo and Seamaster are really similar in dimensions. They're 41 millimeters cases. They're about 12.5 millimeters thick, and they have 20 millimeter lug width as well. The Promaster on the left here is a much larger watch, which I wanted to just include for comparison. It is, I believe, 44 millimeters in diameter and substantially thicker than the other two watches, though it does share the 20 millimeter lug width with them. And I'll give you a quick look at the case backs here. As you can see, the Fujitsubo is a different color. That's because it is titanium, as I mentioned, and it is not only titanium, but it is also finished with an hardening technique called Duratect, which Citizen uses on their mid to high range titanium watches. I own quite a number of titanium watches by Citizen, and the ones with Duratect are significantly more scratch resistant than plain titanium. For comparison, I do have a plain titanium Seamaster Pro, the 2231-17E, which is a grade 2 soft titanium, and it's amazing how easily that type of titanium scratches. So the finishing is important. Citizen did make the first titanium watch. I think they're probably, you could say, definitely the leaders in titanium watches today, and no exception here. This watch is an excellent example of their work. I'm going to go a little bit more into the positives and negatives of this watch, but I'll tell you quickly to begin. This watch, you may or may not know, came out to a significant amount of fanfare and attention. There was a lot of articles about this in the watch community, a lot of reviews, which you may have already seen. And being a Citizen titanium black dive watch, it immediately got my attention. I do like the 70s design of this watch. This is a very faithful, almost remake of a 70s Citizen watch called the Challenge Diver. I do like that aesthetic a lot. So for all those reasons, I was very excited about this watch, though I didn't get it right when it came out. When I did get it, I was not that impressed for some reason, and I really didn't pay it much attention. I actually put it away. And after some time, I came back to it. I said, let me give this watch a try. And I wore it for a couple of days, and I realized I was starting to like the watch. And I did what a lot of other reviewers and commenters on this watch have mentioned, and the things I've come across on the internet, and I swapped out the rubber strap for a NATO. And I do like NATO straps, as you can tell. And that made a big difference in the comfort as well. And that's what really pushed me into the category of really liking this watch. And I won't go into it in a lot of detail, but the NATO strap is a great choice for this type of watch. It's a tool watch diver. It's not a fancy or dress diver, so it really goes well with the equivalent in a watch strap, which is a NATO strap. As you can see, the lugs are really as simple as it gets. There's almost no decoration at all. There's not even a bevel. There's no different finishing on the sides or the top of the lugs. It's as simple as it gets. So I feel that type of design works well with the NATO. And here you can see in comparison, even though I love wearing my Omega on a NATO strap, it's a much more intricately designed case and bezel. It's you can see here the twisted lugs, the scalloped edging on the bezel. It's quite different from the Citizen. And so I'll tell you one thing about the Fujitsubo that may be a negative. I think it's a little bit of a negative, but like I said, I like the watch so much that it's outweighed by the positives. And wait, before I get to that, let me show you the loom here. A quick loom shot. That's the cheaper Promaster. That's the Fujitsubo. They use the same color loom. This is very typical of Citizen. And this is the Omega, which actually, this was just a momentary exposure to light. The Citizens were brighter than the Omega, though I prefer the Omega's loom color. And back to what I was saying, the Fujitsubo and Seamaster, if you recall at the beginning of the video, are very similar in dimensions, but in person it doesn't look that way. My impression of the Fujitsubo was that it was much more chunky than its thickness of 12.3 or 12.5 millimeters would suggest. And I actually used my own caliper to verify that, though I don't have a very fancy digital one. It's just a simple analog one, but I confirmed the measurements that I had read were correct. I confirmed the case diameter and the thickness, and I confirmed the same for this Omega Seamaster, but I was confused as to why it felt like such a larger watch, or at least a thicker watch. Maybe not larger in diameter, but it definitely felt thicker. Here's a very thick watch, the cheaper Promaster. As you can see, this is obviously a much bigger watch. But the thing with the Fujitsubo is I realized that the watch doesn't thin out as you go away from the center, meaning there's no slope, there's no curvature to the crystal, and the bezel does not get thinner towards the outside of the watch. You can see that clearly here with the Seamaster. The Seamaster is that type of watch where it's much thinner at the edges in contrast to the middle of the watch. So I did a rough measurement with my caliper, and the Seamaster on the outside of the bezel is only like between 8 and 9 millimeters thick, whereas the Fujitsubo here on one of the NATO straps I put it on is the same thickness in the middle of the crystal as it is right on the outside of the bezel. So you have a watch that, yes, it does have a thin sounding 12.3 millimeter thickness. However, it is 12.3 millimeters all the way up to the edge of the bezel and the outer reaches of the case. It does not get thin towards the outside of the case at all, which is actually quite common, and you see that on all kinds of watches, expensive or cheap, and that's why a measurement of thickness taken right at the top of the crystal doesn't tell you the whole story. Let me just put it that way. So, though this watch on paper is the same thickness as the Seamaster, it does not feel as thin at all. It feels much thicker. And this is somewhat exacerbated on the NATO strap, unfortunately, even though I think it looks great on a NATO strap. Due to the extra material underneath the watch, that's going to push it up a little further as well. So, main thing I would say here, I'm a person who really likes thin watches, and that's the main negative of this watch, is that even though the dimensions sound thin, it does not wear very thin. Now, it's not huge, like hockey puck level thick. It's not like the other Promaster I showed there, which is a over 13 millimeter thick watch. It's not extremely thick, but it's definitely not a thin watch. And its case diameter may not be very large. It's 41 millimeters is a very reasonable size, I think, among dive watches. But just go into it if you're interested in this watch, knowing that it's not going to be I don't think you'll get the wearing experience of a thin diver if that's what you're looking for. That is my preference, but again, I'm willing to overlook that because of the other positives of this watch. Namely, I love what it looks like. I love that it's very lightweight titanium, and I love it in its other dimensions. I think, like I said, 41 millimeters is possibly my favorite size for a dive watch. It is. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons I love the Seamaster so much. And here you can get a good view of what I'm talking about. It doesn't look like that thin of a watch, again, because it truly is not that thin when you reach the end outer portion of the bezel, whereas on a lot of other watches. The watch is much thinner at that point than it is at the center of the crystal, which is where the stated thickness is usually measured at. So those are my thoughts on the good and bad of this watch. I would say overall my impression tilts much more towards positive, for the simple reason that this is not a very expensive watch for something that feels quite high quality in hand. I've seen great deals for this watch lately. I've even seen them sold like through the official refurbished watch channel of Citizen on eBay from time to time, and secondhand you can find many examples of this in great condition as well. So it's a watch that is not too expensive, considering it is a titanium dive watch, and not just plain titanium, but a titanium with a excellent anti-scratch finish applied to it. And I think no matter what, you should always have a black dive watch in the collection. It's one of the most classic looks for a watch. I think a collection consisting of a dress watch and a black dive watch is a fine two-watch collection. And I do think that they did a great job with this particular dial and bezel. The shape of the markers go very well with the font of the bezel. Even the writing on the dial, I think, is really well done, really beautiful. Typeset or font they used on everything does not have unnecessary writing on the dial, but it's also not, completely barren either. I'll leave you with one last critique, and it's that bezel that you just saw there. I'm not a particular fan of this really extra polished bezel. Not the easiest to grip. It kind of defeats the function of a rotating bezel. But again, it's a minor negative, I think, in what is overall was a positive impression, especially after, like I said, I put it on the NATO strap. So let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.